Hmm. Uh, huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we're going to be diving back into some encounters of the Dogman. Before I get into that, a couple of plugs though. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca, and our social media channels as well. CryptidClues on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Additionally, you can find us on Patreon where you can get ad-free, exclusive early episodes. And if you just want to say hi or send us an email or a question, you can do so at cryptidclues@gmail.com. So, without further ado, I've been chatting with this individual, and we've had some really good conversation over the past little bit, and they shared two interesting scenarios encountering a Dogman. And this isn't directly with them; they're explaining it in their own words on behalf of other members in their life. And for anonymity reasons, I'm going to be keeping this completely anonymous for names and everything, just out of respect. So, without further ado, let's begin, and I quote, "Before I start, this story is from the perspective of my friend Harold, and for the sake of anonymity, I will keep details as vague as possible, along with not using his name or the names of the people involved. The Dogman Wolfman of Manchester, New Jersey. I believe that I saw a cryptid that most people would know as a Dogman, or a Wolfman of the sort, in New Jersey Pine Barrens. A little bit about me first. When I received my license at 17 years old, I started spending all my free time outdoors, hiking all over the East Coast, but mostly within the New Jersey Pine Barrens since I live in New Jersey. I just graduated Stockton University with a bachelor's degree and environmental science degree, and I worked as a naturalist at Batstow Village in Wharton State Forest for a while, which is the biggest state forest within the New Jersey Pine Barrens. I got the job before my internship ended due to my knowledge of plants and animals. They did not expect me to have the credentials because at the time I was not even finished with my first semester in college. I only give out this information because when I see an animal in the woods, day or night, I know with 100% certainty what I'm looking at. And for almost 6 years from the time of writing this story, I can't wrap my head around the creature that I saw. I'm an open-minded person to a point. I do believe certain cryptids can exist solely if the biology for the creature is possible, but that does not put a bipedal canine on my list. Roughly about 6 years ago, I, along with two of my friends, one a welder and one a mechanic, and I will be naming the welder Chris and the mechanic Alan, went off-roading in my friend Alan's truck somewhere in Manchester, New Jersey. We met with a bunch of Alan's off-roading buddies in a spot they frequented. I do not know the specific area, only that it was in Manchester, New Jersey, and it was very close to the general vicinity of the abandoned brick factory. And hung out for a few hours. Drove around the dirt trails and just had a good time socializing with other people. I did not have any alcohol or any pot in my system because we left and I had to drive myself home. So I was sober along with my friend Alan, who was also sober, but my friend Chris was a bit high. We're beginning to leave, and as we were taking the trails to get back to the main road, my friend Alan told me to help look out for deer. He was driving about 35 miles per hour because the dirt path we were on was pretty open, about 30-ish feet wide, and we were dead in the middle in case he had to respond to a deer jumping out of the tree line. A few minutes go by, and my sharp eye spotted deer running alongside the truck, but within the tree line, so the view of it wasn't more than a dark brown patch of fur. As I'm about to say something to my friend Alan, thinking that this deer is going to run in front of the car and try to commit suicide, it speeds up its pace significantly and gets about 20 feet ahead of the truck still in the tree line, and then proceeds to jump out in front of the truck. For as long as I live, I will never forget what I saw that night. It ran on its two back legs, looked right up at us, and to our horror, it ran by this 30-foot wide dirt road in 2 to 3 steps and went into the opposite tree line. In those few seconds, I saw this dog man or wolf man, and to this day, I cannot forget what I saw. It was roughly 7 feet tall, guesstimating its height using my friend Alan's lifted truck as a reference, covered in dark brown fur. Every inch of its body I saw was covered in this dark brown fur, but the chest and stomach area had less fur and a lighter colored fur than the rest of the body. But even under all this fur, you could make out extreme muscle definition, very similar to an Olympic bodybuilder. It also had a canine-type head with a long snout and 2 distinct perked-up wolf ears and large muscular legs. The torso and arms were similar to that of a very muscular man with large hands. The hands had visible claws that looked like it could do some real damage, and its eyes reflected an unnatural color of light that I haven't seen in the animal kingdom. As soon as it jumped into the opposing tree line, my friend Alan slammed on the brakes, and my friend Chris said, "I know I'm high, but what the actual fuck was that?" My friends, puzzled by what we just saw, look at me and go, "Okay, nature boy, please tell us that was something explainable." I sat there dumbfounded. I told them I did not have an answer based in reason or science, or anything I could logically think of, and my friend Alan hightailed it out of there. To this day, my friend Chris has convinced himself that it wasn't a hallucination because of the pot, and my other friend Alan, who does not believe in the supernatural and absolutely refuses to have an open mind, does not speak about this event and pretends it didn't happen. To this day, I still have no logical explanation for what I saw. I do not believe that a bipedal canine creature could logically or biologically exist, but what I saw was something matching the description with my own eyes, and it is very real. End quote. I find this first fascinating encounter to be incredible. I just have to say now, this is the downfall to something that I stand by highly when you have a group of people experience the same encounter and you can reaffirm each other. This is the negative alternative that can sometimes come up from such a thing, where they all three together saw this thing clear as day in front of them, but the one is the only individual who is acknowledging it, that it happened, and still sees it in his mind, where the other two are dismissing it, don't want anything to do with it. And I think that is the common general consensus among hunters and truckers and individuals that are in these remote areas of the world that experience these inexplainable things, that shut it away. Sometimes even with other people, they just bundle it up and do not talk about it and refuse to ever let it see the light of day again. And I don't blame them, because you're seeing something that's not supposed to exist, something that is not, as put in this encounter, logically, scientifically, biologically explained. There's no credibility to such a thing to be alive. But here we are. It's very real, and the description is written in this story matched exactly what a dogman, wolfman would appear to be. A few notable things are the prominent ears pointing up, the claws, and just the way that it's standing up, about 7 feet tall. So this is something that shares a lot of similarities to other dogman sightings, but when we're dealing with something that almost sounds like when speaking with the individual that wrote this, the term jackal came up, and that's something I find fascinating, because I always like to compare and attribute history having explanations for these things. You have religious tapestries and paintings that go into depth about chariots of fire. You can see the illustration in the sky and such, and that is attributed to religion. And then you go back even further, and we have incredible Egyptian hieroglyphics and art that shows different deities and beings, and one of these beings is the body of a man, head of a dog. We all know him. And again, I'm not saying that is word for word spot on and equivalent here, but I just think people saw things and they drew representations of them. And I just find that very interesting because something like this that was represented eons ago is still relevant and prominent today, to the point where it's scaring people because we're not told about these things. You go out into the woods, 4x4ing, having a good time, camping with no preparation, and you stumble upon one of these things, and what do? There's no proper rule book or guidebook that gives us information on how to deal with these things. The only thing that we know to do is to acknowledge that this is out of our control. We need to step back and leave the area as quickly as possible, because these things are unpredictable. These things can be very dangerous, and we don't even for sure know if they're all a physical or a paranormal, even an extraterrestrial entity yet. It's all things that are coming together and are slowly opening up here. The more we do research and the more we look into this, and again, I'm not a researcher by any means. I'm no field expert, but I'm someone that likes to take this information, look at it, and combine it with other insights and just kind of connect the dots and just try to learn with Ruben what is going on. That's basically the title of what we are. We're learners. We're not professionals, but we're learners, and condensing this information is what helps us progress further and really minute everything out. And like this story here, there's a lot of minute details about you're on the lookout. It wasn't some accidental sighting. You're waiting for a deer to jump out in front of the truck because you want to make sure everyone's going to be safe. And sometimes deer do this, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. This thing defeats all logic and explanation just standing in front of you and your friends. And thank goodness they got out of there safely. That's definitely the biggest concern, because another thing too, and this is something Ruben always likes to bring up, Dogman always seem to have an interesting little connection with vehicles. They like to just appear, and they go as quickly as they come. But often with people in vehicles, either sitting, parked, or driving down a dirt road. It's fascinating. But before I continue on here, I'm just going to jump to a quick ad break here, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. So I have another occurrence here. This is a continued story of the Dogman of Manchester, and this is, again, written by the same individual. So, and I quote, "Hi, my name is George, and I believe I had a similar encounter to Harold's. It was close to where his first encounter was, which was close to the abandoned brick factory in Manchester. To start off, my brother has taken me to this place before with Harold, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I decided to go back there with a group of friends one night. And to my horror, we encountered something that I never thought would be real. So, like I stated above, my friends and I came back to the abandoned brick factory to explore it shortly after my brother took me with his friend Harold. He warned us never to come back there at night, but we didn't heed Harold's warning seriously to never come back there at night. He told me it was because he's had some other experiences there that haunted him for a long time, and thinking that he was joking around about that. But to fast forward to the story, my group of friends and I decided to go to the abandoned brick factory. And when we arrived, we decided to go towards the path that leads to the abandoned brick factory. And as soon as we got there, we felt an eerie presence, and we felt like we were being watched. My friends and I were a little spooked, and as our eyes darted all along the wood line, I spotted something. In the wood line up ahead, I saw something that shouldn't be possible, or that shouldn't exist. To my horror, there was what looked like a werewolf. Its piercing yellow eyes were staring into my soul, and it gave me creeps when I was looking at it. To describe it, it was very tall, abnormally tall, and I would say about 9 feet tall at the head, with large wolf-like or dog-like perked ears and a long snout. Its body was similar to the build of an Olympic bodybuilder, with large muscles that were visible through the massive fur that was standing there. But its head was similar to a German shepherd or a wolf, and its hands ended in claw-like digits. I blinked to make sure this was not in my imagination, and to my horror, my friends reacted to it as well. My friends also saw this eerie presence, and they were all startled. To me, it felt like it was beckoning me to come closer, and its stare was so quiet and soul-piercing, which both weirded me out and gave me the same sensation a deer would have when seeing headlights. It felt like it was waiting for the perfect time to strike. I felt a primal sense of fear when looking at this creature. It kind of also reminded me of an Egyptian jackal, except this shouldn't be real. The creature didn't do anything but stare at us and make us feel intimidated. And once we felt like it was gone, we ran out of that area. To this day, I'm not exactly sure of what I saw, but when my brother showed me an illustration of a dogman, it made me shudder with fear. Whatever I saw that night looked just like the illustration my brother showed me. And to this day, I'm still in disbelief with what I saw. I will never go back to that location. I felt like I was in danger the entire time, and I felt like this creature was trying to intimidate us and warn us to never come back to its territory. In conclusion, I don't know what I saw that night, but I hope I never meet it again, and things really do go bump in the night. Be careful out exploring in the Pine Barrens, and never go to the brick factory at night. End quote. So, we all know the Pine Barrens are a famous location associated with the New Jersey Devil. This is an area that, again, is attributed to paranormal and just crazy phenomena. So when we look at this account, we see the mention directly, like I attributed beforehand, the Egyptian jackal. This is the association. And then we can also pinpoint other things like the lasting impression that's put onto this individual. And this is something that, again, is attributed throughout many Bigfoot and Dogman accounts. Something that does not go away. It sticks with you for a long period of time, so much that it causes you to never want to go back out into the woods. Like I mentioned before, this thing will hush you up from wanting to talk about it. I'm glad that this individual has shared this account and has gone forward with it, because this is a very terrifying thing, and it helps warn other people about specific areas. There's always parties and interested groups that are looking at hotspots and stuff, and these hotspots, a lot of them are very secretive, but there are random spots as well that these things could just turn up in. And in this case, the abandoned brick factory seems to be a very concurrent hotspot that people need to avoid at night. Now, this individual's brother had a significant amount of interesting experiences at this spot. So again, it goes hand in hand with some areas on this planet that are almost, I don't want to say a portal, but they're just a gateway for some sort of supernatural occurrence of just all sorts. But then where do you draw the line from supernatural to extraterrestrial or biological? All these different things that keep occurring. It just kind of is flabbergasted how relatable they are, and why are they always popping up together in these areas. I would love to go and explore an area like this, but I definitely wouldn't want to do it at night. This person, again, was able to see it with his friends and was able to reiterate and reaffirm with his friends that, okay, there was something there that we saw. They felt that they were being watched the whole time, and they did get to be spooked quite a bit, because this thing, again, eerily bloody similar to that first occurrence, which, again, attributes to probably, I think, the initial Dogman. I think they believed it was the same one, but the same size, same build, and the claws, too. All these pointy claws like for digits, and you start blinking to make sure this is a real thing, and you want it to be a fake thing, but you don't want to just imagine you're dreaming this is a horrible nightmare, and you don't want it to be a reality. You just don't want this to be existent at all. That's terrifying. So make sure at the end of the day you just trust your feelings and you trust your instincts. I'll reiterate it again. They felt like they were being watched, and chances are you are. Who knows how far a distance away these things could be or what it is watching you. But if you were to go to a mall, for example, and you can test this as an experiment. If you go to a mall, you'll be able to just kind of pick people in a crowd and stare at them. After a while, they will look directly at you and make eye contact. And this is just because of some, at least to my knowledge, a extrasensory type factor that individuals have. And it's almost like a way of identifying how, I don't want to say being hunted, that's a little bit too of a dark, blunt way of putting it, but eventually if you're hunting prey, how do they know? There's some kind of click where they just kind of like clue into their surroundings, like, hey, something's a little off. Now, if you're hundreds and hundreds of feet away and you got a sniper rifle and everything like that, I would attribute that to being a very different story. But if you are up close within proximity, where you were to hunt with like a spear or something like that, or use your hands like claws and like animals like Bigfoot and Dogman would, if you get up close enough, then you're gonna feel. If you get up close enough to a person in that same kind of realm as a Dogman or a person or a Bigfoot, sorry, then you can test this theory out. You can see, okay, this person senses that I'm looking at them, and I would say high chances that they turn around and they make solid eye contact with you. Just a fun experiment you can do. Sometimes I like to people watch just for fun, not just to be a creep at the mall and stare at people, but it's just enjoyable sometimes just to kind of like take in your surroundings. And again, attribute that to this. Take in your surroundings, be aware, because you never know what is actually watching you. And with that, that is the end of this episode of Campfire Clues. So again, thank you for joining in. Thank you for the permission to share this story. And until next time, you can find us. CryptidClues.ca is our main website. You can also check us out on our social media channels. CryptidClues on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And on Patreon, where you get those ad-free exclusive early episodes as well. And if you want to say hi or just check in, you can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. So until next time, everybody, take care and stay safe. Thank you.